Good morning. This is Bill from Auto House of Naples and Curious Cars on it's an unfortunately balmy Florida Tuesday. It's really not that bad. The temperature's not that bad. It's probably the high 70s. Well, it's probably even the low 70s, but in the context of this rather nice chilly winter we've been having, this day is a bit of a bummer because it portends of the miserable hot weather that I know is just around the corner. It's already February. You still get some cool days in February. March is coming. Do you get cool days in March? A few. April, it starts to be over. So off towards another, summer season of misery, and what the hell are you going to do? Today I have this 1988 Buick Regal. This is a GM10 body. Later it got described as the W platform for General Motors. And I spent all night, look, I know this car a little bit well because I worked at Sunshine Buick here in Naples in the in 1990 I worked there. And these cars were pretty hot at the time and they were all over the place. When I got there a few months later, the sedans came out. So I drove my share of these old Regals. And of course, the trade-ins, you saw some other GMW bodies. So I know the car. It means something to me. It's a car of my youth, even if it's not particularly special, and we'll get into why. But I labored last night over what to say about this car. I really, really did. I mean, number one, this is an 88 Buick Custom in the most base of base trim, so it's not particularly special. You could get a GS model, which was a little bit fancier, had a big, well, not an 88, it didn't have a bigger engine. They all had this engine. But they had four-seat bucket interiors. There goes Peter. Back in an S-Class. Good for him. He lived past the indignation of driving that C the other day. So, anyway, so, you could get this in a more exciting trim package than this one has. But, when I'm out on the used market looking around, seeing what's out there, you take whatever one-owner 40,000-mile car you can find. I mean, even if it's not the particular trim package that you like to have, it turns out you can't go get the one up the street that is. So, most of these cars are pieces of shit. I mean, if there's any out there even. And, there are a few which says something about what they are, but we'll get into it. But the GM10 platform was an extremely big deal. When you think about the history of technology and that sort of thing, everything stayed the same for a very, very long time, and then all of a sudden started exploding. I mean, look at it in terms of the internet and computers and communications. I mean, through 1990, we basically had the telephone and the telegraph and, a few little bits of this and that. And then AOL came out and there was instant messaging, and then everything just exploded and technology advanced so quickly. And then all of a sudden we're in this, ultra digital internet world where you can share a picture of your private parts with some woman you found in Sweden 2 days before. It's a very different world, and of course one that the Unabomber warned about. I shouldn't keep bringing up the Unabomber, but I can't help it. It all seems so much more prescient today. But anyway, the same thing happened in a less dramatic way with cars. I mean, for many, many years, and it's certainly the domestic car, the U.S. car market, GM got away with this full frame, body on frame, construction. The cars all sort of just edged along. They, one would have a chrome bit, and then they would change that chrome bit for the next model year. And, really new, innovative platforms were rare. They didn't come along that often. And then all of a sudden, the 80s rolled around, the gas crisis, the malaise era, Jimmy Carter, and then Reagan with Morning in America and all that stuff. And cars had to change in a rapid hurry, and GM decided that they were going to change along with it. The problem was they were enormous. They were monster company at that time. They had a big market share. They had aging cars which were still selling pretty well, but they knew that a different world was coming. They were smart enough to know that. I mean, Japanese cars were starting to get better and better, and they were encroaching on GM territory. European cars were starting to become more mainstream. They were encroaching. GM knew it had to do something. And, of course, gas became expensive. People became miserable. In other words, the modern world was encroaching on us. And they came out with downsized cars. Started in, 1977 with the Caprice and Cadillacs and some other cars that were smaller than they used to be. The thing was that they were still built in the traditional style. The car that this replaced was the G-body, the Oldsmobile Cutlass, not the Supreme, the Oldsmobile Cutlass, the Buick Regal. You remember the T-types. That was a bit of an anomaly for Buick, the whole T-type Grand National thing, and of course the Pontiac Grand Prix. Thing was, they were all interchangeable personal luxury coupes that basically competed with each other and really didn't look all that different. You could even add in the Monte Carlos. That's 4 cars basically addressing the same consumer need. And GM decided that they needed to change all that. And based on stuff coming from Japan and elsewhere, it appeared that front-wheel drive was going to be the wave of the future. So the first one they came out with was the X Platform. And you may remember the most famous X Platform car was the Chevy Citation, which was, in fact, hideously ugly, I think. I mean, some people might have thought it was good looking. I didn't. I thought it was a really unappealing car, even as a kid when it was still fairly fresh. It just didn't look right to me. But that was it. That was GM's first foray into the transverse mounted, front engine, front wheel drive car of the future. And it sold 800,000+ cars in its first year. It was a raging success. And then it fell off a cliff because it turned out it was an absolute piece of shit. And people realized that after the first year. Sales died. It went horribly wrong for Chevy, and of course I think there was the Omega or something, and then they came out with the A Platform, which was another front drive based on that X Platform. I hate all this GM platform shit. I really honestly do. They have like 119 different platforms, and I start talking about them and I put myself to sleep. So I'll try to just make it abbreviated and get through it because it's fairly important. The A Platform, you remember the Chevy Celebrity, the Buick Century, that came out. And this car, the GM10, or what became the W Platform, was intended to replace it. And it did, sort of, but not entirely, and we'll get into that. So the problem with this was, GM bet the farm on this car. They invested, some people say, $7 billion in the development of these GM10 cars. And, I mean, that is a shitload of money. It's like $15 billion in today money. Yeah, $7 billion today is a lot of money to invest in a new platform. Never mind in 1982 when they started doing this thing. But again, GM was this big monolith. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. It's just a behemoth. And it all went to shit. The car got delayed. Everything got assways. They were supposed to come out right around the time the Aero, Ford Taurus, and Mercury Sable did. But Ford, frankly, cleaned GM's clock with those cars. I mean, they came out in, 85, 86. They were innovative. Ford had an incredibly smart advertising campaign that worked well. And GM was left responding with a car that they thought would be ready, but isn't. So, by the time this thing rolled out in 88, 2 years behind its intended production, it was over. Ford had already sort of wowed the crowd. GM was, coming along trying to be a player too, but not really cutting it. And to make matters worse, it was only the coupes that came out in 88. You didn't see any sedans on the W platform, the GM10 platform, until 1990 when they came out. And then the car company that needed a sedan more than anyone, the Regal, didn't come out till 91. So they just blew it. They absolutely blew it. I don't know what they spent $15 billion on, because when we get into this car, we'll see what the hell was up, or $7 billion back then. So anyway, there it is. Ford did really good with the Sable and the Taurus. They were terrific cars. The Aero was now the wave of the future. And in the middle of all of that, GM decided that personal luxury coupes were going to be the way to go. It's what people wanted. Man, it was a dying market. I mean, that was a 70s things with, Continental kits and opera windows and belt buckles on the trunk and Rolls-Royce grills. That was the heyday of the personal luxury coupe. People in the 80s were gravitating towards sedans. They went from 30% of the market share in the early 80s to over 56% in like 1990. And GM just wasn't ready for that, and they hadn't geared themselves up for it, and their big bet on these modern, at the time, W platform cars fell way short. They admitted they were going to have like 7 factories. They were going to garner 21% of the the new car market in the United. 21%. They had such lofty goals, and of course, all of them fell short. So, very sad stuff. So anyway, let's get into this one. We're going to start inside the trunk. This Regal Custom from 88, which was a sea change. Again, this replaced that full frame 87, which, a lot of people liked, was a pretty good car, but of course was the G-body and how do you say that? Antiquated by the time this thing came out. Nice big trunk. You have to give them credit for that. It has this crappy corporate GM, furry gray and black carpet everywhere, but it did have a nice sized trunk. Part of that is because it did not have normal coil springs in the back. It used the sort of fiberglass leaf spring, not unlike the Corvette, which eventually got replaced down the road with a more traditional rear suspension. But with this suspension, which works fine, it did leave a lot of room for trunk space. You see the original mats in here. This is a miracle, this car. And underneath there's all the spare tire crap. Sorry about my bag of stuff. While we're in, now I'll go back in a minute when I hang the tag. Anyway, nice big trunk in the car. It had these weird pillar-mounted door handles. This was not something that had been seen before. I mean, door handles were always here. This was very trick for GM at the time. And I kind of thought it was cool, and maybe it still is, I don't know. But there it is. It also had the doors that went up into the roof, which in theory helped with structural stability and that sort of thing. But, at the end of the day, who can say? It had flush glass, much more flush than in prior generations. It was much more aerodynamic, undoubtedly that. You had this big curved back window, swooping roof. And this was, frankly, a big car. I mean, the H-body cars at the time, the front-wheel drive H-body cars, they were like the Pontiac Bonneville, the Delta 88, that sort of thing. This thing was almost as big as them. It was a big mid-sized car at the time. Not by 75 standards, but certainly by 88 standards, and just wasn't that big inside. So big outside, small inside. Yeah, GM really put it together. Anyway, you give that a tug. And here's one of the distinguishing features of this W-body car is this weird hood release right here. Really thought that was weird at the time, and frankly, I still do. Anyway, we'll have a look under the hood. If I can get in there. Dalton did a stellar job detailing this one, I can tell you. He didn't even open it. This is exactly the way it looked when I bought this car. I can guarantee he did not wash the engine or do any dressing. This is just typical Dalton stuff, and it's why what is this? Oh, it's just what the hell is that? It's like it's like the thing underneath the rubber cap. I don't know, that's weird. Anyway, it was just, not his best day, as usual. Here's one of the issues. This is a 60-degree GM V6. It's a very good motor, but it came out in like 1980. This is not a modern motor that went in these cars, and it was the only one you could get. There were 3 cars. There was this one, the Buick Regal. This was aimed at the more traditional buyer of, personal luxury cars. Then there was the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, including the international model, which was aimed at, people who might otherwise choose an import. And then there was the Pontiac Grand Prix, which was aimed at the sporty car market, and that was, in fact, Motor Trend's Car of the Year in 1988. something they probably apologize for later. But anyway, they all use the same anemic 130-ish horsepower V6, which had been around since the Chevy Citation. I mean, where the hell did the $7 billion go? Where is the super advanced, the V6 or even, the Quad 4 that was under development at the time? It just wasn't there. Instead, you got this very tried and true, no doubt, and venerable and considered to be a very good motor, the 2.8, but frankly boring and antiquated by the time 1988 rolled around. It just didn't make sense to have it in this, new swoopy aero platform that GM was pumping up as the wave of the future. You could get it with a manual gearbox in the Pontiac and I think also in the Oldsmobile, but not the Buick. The Buick, you could only get the Turbo Hydra 4-speed automatic, which was fine for Buick customers. In fact, when I went to work at Sunshine Buick back in 90, the cars, the Regals they sold the most of were the ones they put the carriage roofs on and Continental kits. So it was still an older buyer. But anyway, there it is, nice and clean under the hood, but nothing special and nothing surprising. And again, not what you would expect from a car that was supposed to be the wave of the future when it came out. There you have the Regal custom bed. Before I get in, I want to see if there's anything else I can do. You got very, cool looking aero alloy rims, which I think were sort of tricked on the Mercedes design. It looks a little bit like that with the holes and the lug nuts. You've got kind of a handsome stainless front bumper integrated. You've got small headlamps with, I don't know who that was texting me this morning, but they can screw off. Anyway, these small headlamps with, not the traditional big replaceable sealed beam units, but ones that you put bulbs in, and then the waterfall grille, which was, part of the throwback, again, to make the older buyers feel comfortable. And instead of the 3 shields, had this weird looking logo that I can't immediately place. But all in all, a pretty handsome design. If I probably liked the Cutlass design the best, I think, as a kid at the time. I did not like the Grand Prix design, even though it was geared towards me. And the Regal I thought was quite handsome, but didn't look like for, somebody my age. I do like the way the windshield sort of swoops into the sides. Nice little black mirrors. It's not a bad looking car, but not particularly exciting either. I'm going to go around the other side. Actually, I think there's an easy entrance feature, which I'm going to try for the rear seat. People were just not buying coupes then, though. I mean, GM, just typical GM. No, I don't feel any ease of entry feature. The rear seats, this car is a miracle, man. It should not exist. I'm going to get into why, I don't know, we'll get into stuff in a minute. But anyway, you can fit 3 Canadians back there. You see it's got center belt for middle passenger. Quite a few of these were sold in the 4-seat configuration with front buckets and rear buckets. This one was not. This base custom model actually has what I believe it's got a center belt here. So this is a 6-passenger coupe. This would have been the kind of thing you rented back in the day, and certainly a price leader. That is one of the things these cars had going for them, as they were not very high priced. It was a lot of car for the money at the time. That's one of the things that the car magazines liked about them. And, anyway, there it is. The resale value did suck. Let's go around the other side. All right, here's another thing that was interesting. They spent $7 billion on this car, and it didn't get airbags until 1994. I mean, other cars had airbags in 1998. The Ford Thunderbird Turbo Coupe certainly did. I believe it had standard anti-lock brakes as well. Dodge Diplomat in 1988 actually had an airbag, if I remember correctly. So it was very strange. But because of laws, they had to be these passive belts. So you see the belt mechanism is built into the door. Technically, you're supposed to leave this connected to the seatbelt receptacle over there, so it becomes comes a passive seatbelt. And, you know, when you get in the car, it's just automatically on you. Like it wasn't those old rabbits. And then that brief moment in history when you either had to have an airbag or passive belts, and it had this stupid thing on a track where you'd get in the car and the belt would go, if you remember that. And they sucked. And they broke, and they were awful. But, you know, again, it was a very quick passage of technology that really, you know, threw car companies that didn't have their shit together for a loop. And GM was definitely a car company that didn't have his shit together. And now I see I've got to delete more videos. I keep doing that. Bear with me a minute. All right, couple video. You know what? I just, speaking of car companies that don't have their shit together, then there's also cameramen that don't have their shit together, and I'm one of them. Anyway, so it had these passive belts. It had no airbags. Again, where did the money go? It had acres and acres of fake wood trim. I mean, just acres of it. Which, how does that really... I mean, you're again trying to make this ultra-modern car that sort of is the wave of the future. You're trying to wow the people who are already wowed by the Taurus and Sable. You're not going to do that with wood trim. You know, the Oldsmobile had a bit of a fancier dash, but it was convoluted and weird. The Pontiac was just over-the-top plastic fantastic crap with all kinds of weird switches on the instrument hump, and it was just strange. And again, the Regal, meant to appeal to the more mature buyer, did its best to emulate earlier Buicks. I mean, remember, this is '88. There are people who are coming out of this thing, coming out of the T-Type and the Grand National, who see Buick as a real hot rod. Gone are they. Gone are the turbo cars. And in are these sort of anemic front-wheel drive things. And, you know, I get it. I mean, eventually they got the 3.1 in here. In fact, the next year they got the 3.1, which was a better motor. Same platform, better motor. And then eventually the 3.8, the Buick motor came in, which was a big deal for that car and really made it much more peppy and beloved, because that was truly, the 3800 was a terrific engine from GM, and one of the reasons so many of these cars were still on the road. So anyway, I'm gonna see what all those texts were about. Let me pause it again for 1 second, and I'll be right back. All right, so before I get in and go for a drive, I want to get my crap out of the back, hang the license plate, and grab this bag of cassettes. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna get this, hang this up, the cops don't get offended, and I'm going to put this, actually I'll leave the bag in the back, the hell with it, but I'm taking the cassettes. Nice. Okay, again, so the seat belts that are, you know, supposed to be passive because, again, airbags didn't show up, nor did anti-lock brakes. Oh, I mean, again, $7 billion, twice what Ford spent on the Taurus Sable, which was huge for them. And GM couldn't do it while coming up with some modern features beyond some gimmicky look. It still has the plastic protective shit there. This car is a real time machine. I mean, this is the veritable little old lady car. I actually went and bought it on a Sunday. I found it on one of these local internet apps, you know, by a really nice old couple. I mean, old, in one of these local, you know, fancy little communities that was built on a tomato field, you know, 20 years ago. And Dalton went with me to pick it up, little new Dalton. And, you know, I think they got the impression that I was buying it for him, like my son going off to college. I'm thinking, yeah, he's going off to UNC Chapel Hill. I mean, for the love of God. I mean, if, God knows, I never had kids by design. I always wore one of those little rubber things for good reasons. But if I did, and I did end up with Dalton as a child, not only would I think I had failed miserably as a parent, I probably would have to do that, what is that Japanese thing, Harry Carey or whatnot, to just end the dishonor to me, that I could not live with the shame I'd brought to my family. So that is an absolute fact. That would be the end of me. And frankly, I can think of nothing more offensive. So maybe I'll have to go back and correct those old people in case they did get that impression. But let's fire this thing up. Okay, so the 2.8 fires up predictably. It's a good engine. It just isn't very powerful and, isn't very refined and isn't very modern. And that's just, again, why would GM use that in one of these cars? This ultra-modern new way of doing things with the old engine. Maybe they just, they were worried about quality control and didn't want to have to worry about the engine. Strong possibility. The dashboard is weird. It's got this little... it's kind of cool, and it was definitely cool at the time, but in terms of instrumentation, this base model that only has the digital dash and, digital speedometer and the analog fuel gauge, analog everything else, probably had the best ergonomics. When you got into the more upmarket models that had all this digital stuff, the vacuum fluorescent like the Speedo is in this car, it looked cool, but you could barely read it. It's this... How do they expect the old people buying these cars to see this tiny little hidden buried display in the back? It's just strange what they were thinking. So total form over function in this car. Ditto this big expansive dash and these convoluted buttons. It's got a push button for the lights. That's fine. Push them to go off. It's easy to get used to, but very alien to any GM buyer at the time, and certainly the old people who'd been driving GMs for years. Little vinyl steering wheel, nice sounding horn, which sounds like it's inside the passenger cabin. Has tilt wheel, cruise control. This is all probably standard. Again, because this one was not the sporty version, it's got a column shift up here with this weird blue vinyl-y thing. I don't know why, but the PRNDL, the N appears to be Swedish. It's got those two dots over it, and I have absolutely no idea why. Okay, maybe it's two positions. Maybe they want you to know when you're in neutral and the indicator is supposed to be between them. Let's see. But, whatever the hell it is, it's strange, and maybe they just wanted it to have a little bit of a European touch. You see just 44,000 miles on the clock of this thing, and it definitely is inarguable, not just by the Carfax, but, these cars just didn't stay together this well for that long. If this thing had, 1,044,000, it would be in pieces. Actually, that's not entirely fair, and I'll get into why. Okay, this is not a forgotten car, and I'll get into why in a minute. There you see all the idiot lights. There's your Regal custom thing. Here you have this very unorthodox stereo, which was the bane of aftermarket installers everywhere. A weird little square for the radio. This big swoopy cassette deck here with a storage spot that's just designed to launch whatever you put in there. The minute you hit the gas, it flies out, actually goes under the front seats, and ends up in the back seats. I can attest to this because it happened to me last night. So don't store a gun in there, or it's going to end up in the back seat with the Canadians back there who may or may not use it against you. Whatever you put in there is not staying. So there's the cassette, the climate control. You got a glove box over here. The owner's manual in there. You got a vent down there. Let's turn the AC on a little bit. And we've got the radio's been a little crackly. Let's see if it still is. Yeah, a little bit. It seems to heal itself after a few minutes, but for the moment it's still working pretty good. We got Queen there. That's a favorite of the tranny at Auto Europa. We'll let it crackle for a minute. Let's see, I'm going to turn it way up and down again. And we'll see if it heals itself. I don't want to have it crackling while we're driving, but anyway, 10 or 15 minutes into it, maybe not even that long, it starts to sound fine. Probably just hasn't been turned on in 30 years. It did come with this fantastic bag of cassettes, and let's see what we got in here. All right, we've got Bobby Vinton's Greatest Hits. Heard of him. We've got Roger. Oh God, we're set all the way to hot. That isn't going to work at all. Well, there goes Roger Williams. We've got the Platters. See, they were into diversity, these people. We've got Henry Mancini. Can you see the age of the... Oh, we've got Elvis. And we may put that on. Engelbert Humperdinck. I'm going with that. Here is Polkas. We got Oceanic Band. Nice stuff. We've got Roger Whittaker. I think he was the lead singer of Pink Floyd. I know he wasn't. Just stop. Journey's Greatest Hits. Oh, no, sorry. Johnny's Greatest Hits. Who the fuck is Johnny? When Sunny gets blue. Okay, I'm going to play this because I don't know what the hell it is, and I bet it sucks, but we're going to see. More Roger Whittaker. We got some Garth Brooks. That's pretty racy for those people. And that's a Christmas album. The Platters, Autumn Leaves, Ferrante, and Teacher. I don't know how you say that. And I'm not bending over to get that stupid cassette. But let's see. I'm going to see if this thing works. We're going to put in Johnny's greatest hits and see what happens. Oh, shit. Oh. It's okay, reverse. No, it only 4-hour program. What is this, nothing? Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that's just terrific. I don't know if that's because Johnny sucks, or let's see, try something else. I want to try Roger. Let's put on some Elvis. We'll see if this radio improves as we drive for a minute. Antenna back there, by the way. Yeah, that's very modern, 1988. Anyway, after a minute or two of driving, the crackling dies down and the radio becomes tolerable. So, to me, that's better having the original than replacing it for, the sake of that. So, I suppose if you want to have an aftermarket radio, kind of look at the way he's got these sprinklers set up. The windows down, that would nail me. Thank God no goats this morning. Didn't see them out there. Maybe Peter took the hint and had them shot. I hope so. And here it is. So driving dynamics. Okay, so you've got four-wheel independent suspension with that weird mono-leaf spring in the back. You've got four-wheel disc brakes. You've got front drive with... It doesn't have torque steer, yeah, it does, but it's not really powerful enough to matter, so you don't really feel it. It does have a nice ride. It's a little bit cushy. The three different initial GM10 releases all sprung them differently, to suit the taste of their customers. Buick, the GS actually had the stiffest springs, but the most compliant ride. This one probably does not have those stiff GS springs, and therefore is pretty cushy. So it would have been accessible to your traditional Buick buyer at the time. The transmission shifts pretty good. The engine is what it is. 0 to 60 is not fast. Quarter mile is not fast. And that was one of the initial complaints that people had. The press really liked these cars when they came out. They blew the call. But by the same token, they thought it could use more power. And over the course of time, they did give it more power. Now, I know this video is running long, so I'm going to get into this point real quick. This car is not really forgotten. I don't know if I'm going to say it is in the title or not, just for gags, but it really isn't. One of the reasons is, probably not intentionally. I'm sure it's not what GM intended. But these cars became really great used cars. And I don't mean really for the upper end used car market, but I mean for the really low down, terrible used car market. I mean, for one thing, it was mostly old people who bought the Regals. They took good care of them. They drove them for anywhere from 4 to 8 years, maybe even 10, or as long as these lunatics did. And so they went out on the used market in pretty good shape, and they were cheap. So people on a budget, and I mean we're talking like college students, single mom waitresses with 8 kids, and just people who don't have any friggin' money at all. They were able to buy these cars, and they sought them out because they were known as being pretty damn good cars. So you'd see them littered all over the city streets in horrible condition, paint flaking off them, rust, bad wheels and tires, temporary spares. But man, they got people where they were going. They got GM, maybe even accidentally, built a pretty reliable car. The build quality was shit. I mean, it really wasn't that good. The paint quality so-so, the engine choices, I will say this, in the early 90s, 95, 96, the Buicks got their shit together, and they were pretty good cars. The Regals with the 3800s, all that stuff, they sold well. They were the third best domestic brand, but they still sold half of what they did 10 years before. So small victory for GM there. Their whole grand plans for the W10 went to shit. They just didn't sound like they thought they were going to. And of course, the rest is GM corporate history of malaise and misery. But they did build a car that ended up all over the streets as a pretty good way to get from point A to point B. I imagine a lot of college kids smoked a lot of weed in these things, heading to rock concerts, and the single moms heading to the wherever it is they go, and the old guys who head to the dog track and had a nice GS and act sporty. It became a great car for the common man, the common people, and GM did succeed in that regard. So I give them credit for that. The Accord cost too much on the used market, so they had to go with the Regal and the Cutlass Supreme, or any of the other 37 Cutlasses. Did I ever talk about the A-body, the Century, that this car was supposed to replace? It actually sold better than this car, so they kept it all the way through like 96. The Buick Century, which was based essentially on that old Citation that we talked about, sold better than the Regal, which was a real kick in the teeth. But again, you've got all these brands selling cars that compete with each other. You got the Century essentially competing with the car that replaced it in the same showroom. I mean, it was just typical stupid GM planning and money mismanagement and idiocy, and they took what probably could have been a pretty damn good car if they'd spent their money wisely, this GM10 platform, and instead it just became another bit of GM corporate dreck history. So there it is. This thing is unbelievable. I mean, I don't know if any collector wants a GM10 in this shape to put in with his collection of Grand Nationals and Roadmaster convertibles and other fantastic old Buicks, just to say he has one. But if you are a collector and you want an example of the GM10, this car, condition-wise, will certainly fit well in your collection. Otherwise, with 44,000 miles, these things have $9 brake pads and $27 alternators. I mean, it's a great used car, cheap to maintain, runs strong, cold air. I didn't touch it, just cold still, and they do pretty good. So where it's at for price, I mean, if this were an 87 model Buick Regal in the same condition with the same miles, the rear wheel drive, it would be like 15 grand more than this thing is. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just the way it works. So this is going to be a lot of car for the money. If you have an interest, autohousenaples.com. It'll be up there for sale. If it doesn't sell, I'll just take it to one of these auctions soon. We'll see what it does there. The, Mecum is in July, or that's a long way away. Carlisle is coming up. Maybe GAA in North Carolina. Whatever. A few different places. If you have an interest, give them a call, 239-263-8500, on the web at autohousenaples.com. Thank you very much for having a look today. We appreciate it, and I will see you at the next one. Take care. Assholes. Winged, airborne assholes. I mean, 5 minutes before the video starts. Not a tree overhead. They're not sitting in it. They targeted me. And, you know, that's fine. I'll get my revenge.